All right, what up, everybody? We got Growingtec podcast, episode 2, with Colton Luther, founder of Texas Growers podcast. Bunch of different things going. How's everything going, Colton?
It's good. Business is booming in Texas, man.
Yeah, man, I've been excited to talk to you because obviously a lot of things are happening in Texas. A lot of things are happening across the country. Yeah, and you got a lot of unique insights. Like, I've talked to you a bunch over the last couple years, and you're really up to date on, all the things going on. Yeah, I kind of wanted to start with kind of like a little bit of your background and story, how you obviously got into the cannabis industry, but yeah, like take me back before that even, what was life like growing up for you in Texas, and how did you ultimately, start smoking and then get involved in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, well, I'll try to not make this episode all about how great Texas is, but it is pretty great. I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. I'm a sixth generation Texan, so my family's been here for six generations. It goes back to several iconic historical events that happened here in Texas. So my family, right off the bat, is very proud Texan, and growing up here, that's really instilled in you. Um, Whether it's by like school or just influence and the culture here, to be proud to be a Texan. So growing up, that was always something that was very near and dear to me. I took that very serious. But then I started to take up sports, right? And the sport that I chose was ice hockey, which in Texas is non-existent. So that right there was already going to be a difficult road, a little bit of a different upbringing for my youth. And really, it was kind of an underdog story from the beginning that led me to get a lot of other experience from other places and in other states, even other countries, which just kept reminding me time and time again how great Texas really was. After I left, coming home was always, so much better. So really getting into sports and getting into hockey, just kind of growing up and focusing on chasing my dream of becoming a professional hockey player. A lot of people have those dreams to be a professional athlete or play at the professional level in any sport that they're doing. That dream was actual reality for me. So despite being from Texas, I was actually good enough and determined enough to make it. So I started playing in different markets all across the United States, different leagues, working my way up to a pretty high level in hockey, and ended up suffering some concussions. And really, the concussions, time and time again, started to add up. From the undiagnosed ones that I maybe didn't know I got to the ones that I definitely went to the doctor for, and they told me, "Hey, you got a concussion. You got to sit it out." And so dialing in my brain health kind of led me into cannabis. I was looking at, your brain is not necessarily something that's like your knee or your shoulder where you can get a surgery and rehab it and go to physical therapy. You only have your one brain, right? There's no spare parts. And so my mental health and protecting my brain was really important to me. And that ultimately led me to the decision to walk away from sports and from hockey specifically. That was in that transition period is really where cannabis entered my life, because I had put so much focus and passion on the sports and chasing my dream. And when that was over, I needed something else to kind of put that passion and energy into. And when I figured out how beneficial cannabinoids were to myself, my condition, the anxiety, depression, the headaches that come with everything I was experiencing from post concussions, I knew a lot of other people were experiencing other things in their life and they were using cannabis for the same thing. And I was just really quickly introduced to that community and introduced to the way that the plant can help you without, if you don't abuse it, you can obviously utilize it for what it's there for, which is for the good. And that just really spiraled. I wanted to find out how I could get deeper and deeper into this industry, help more people, guide more young bucks out there like me that were trying to find something natural or an alternative, or not try to go down the whole alcohol and pharmaceutical cocktail route that most people do when they are dealing with pain and injuries. And that's really where we got here, to starting a platform and starting brands. So my upbringing, I mean, my parents are hardcore conservative Texans, man. I mean, they're exactly who you think they would be. We got property, horses, cows, home on the range. They go to church every Sunday. So I really come from that background. My father's a career law enforcement officer, and is now a politician, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into that sector of this conversation. But they were skeptical at first when they started to see the path that I was taking, but now it's definitely changed not only their minds, but I think the whole community around Texas and some of the conservative folks out there around the conversation of hemp or cannabis in general. So, I think all of it led me to be here and kind of take this torch and run with it. So here we are.
That's awesome, man. I didn't know a lot about that. Like, I didn't know about your background in hockey, but that's really cool. And so when did that kind of like stop for you? And then, like how long did it take for you to like really get into, cannabis and, using that to like kind of treat yourself?
Yeah, so I had to quit, I think, playing high level ice hockey when I was 18, which is right when you can get to the pros and to the big leagues. So I was just breaking into like low level, major juniors, minors, professional camps, big offers. And I just had to kind of walk away from all that. So that was senior year of high school. I actually finished high school here in Texas for like the last 6 months of the year. Um, tried to I basically tried to jam pack every personal accomplishment you could into that 6 months. I tried to get a letterman, and I ended up joining the cheer team and became the mascot just to get a letterman, and had a blast. And I was able to just kind of reset. I think go back, and I had sacrificed so much growing up, like homecomings, proms, the parties on the weekends and stuff that high school kids get to do. I really didn't get into a lot of that. I was always choosing to go to the ice rink, to work out, to be on the ice, to work on my skills, or we were actually traveling. So I just basically got a reset. I got to dive in and kind of check some boxes as a young man. And then I realized the way forward is college or the real world. And so I kind of kicked it around in both. I went to school and started to study political science, criminal justice, and a couple other things that ended up coming in handy. But I was also working pretty much full time throughout school. So a lot of people don't actually know that about me. I'm not, not daddy's money. It wasn't all given to me. I worked full time through school at a restaurant. And I'll say, like, a lot of the skills that I apply now to our brands, I learned in the restaurant and, waiting tables, attending bar, and talking to people that were out there in the real world and that were entrepreneurs, more than I learned in college. And that's really when the lights kind of started turning on that, just sitting around in class every day wasn't exactly getting me ahead. And I was just going to end up at the same starting point as everyone else in 4 years. So why not start now? And that kind of started to dig me into the marketing and the media, because I realized, dude, you can't start any companies or any movement or have any messaging in this day and age and not be a media company first and not focus on social media, right? We know that. That's why we're sitting here. So I dove into that first and started to get skills in that area and apply them. And over time, I just started to meet people in and around cannabis and hemp that were looking for help and were looking for the skills that I was able to offer. And those relationships led to other relationships and other clients down the road. And before you know it, we look up and we're 5 years into this industry that we've basically built off of all of our hard work and small businesses. It's actually been kind of crazy in that sense.
Yeah, it's been dope to see, the progression in Texas. I mean, I've only followed, you for a couple years now, but I've definitely seen, a big change since I started following you guys. And yeah, like Texas is booming. And it's cool because you said that sports was a big part of your like childhood, and I feel like so many people in business, like it's kind of what their childhood looks like. They get into sports, try to take it as far as they can, and it kind of like naturally progresses into business. So that's awesome, man. And last kind of question about the backstory and background. I guess like it kind of leads into like all what you're doing today. So like, what are you currently up to in the industry for maybe anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Texas Growers Podcast. That is the gateway to the Texas cannabis industry, the Texas cannabis culture. That ranges from, it can be a little legacy, a little underground, to also the above board operators, the hemp operators, and the cream of the crop. Honestly, I highlight everybody that's in Texas making something happen for us. Things have not happened by chance. We've all put out, we've all had a message, we've all spread that message to our audience and our customer base. And that's why we have the results here. So Texas Growers Podcast is our platform first and foremost for Texas. It seemed the industry had their own platform. It seemed that, definitely California, Colorado, certain states had their own platform and their own voice. Texas needed to do that exact thing as well. And so that's what the Texas Growers Podcast has really turned into. Inside the industry, when we're not doing like media and the podcast side, we are actively working inside of brands. We cultivate here in Texas. So I'm a partner at Geremy Greens. It is a cultivation facility and company that specializes in indoor cultivation of hemp plants. It's federally legal and state compliant hemp that we grow there. We've been licensed since 2020 to do all of that, and we have had massive success. I think breaking into the Texas market and selling raw materials, selling flower to folks, and kind of teaching consumers what they should be getting in flower, not just last year's harvest from California or whatever we have had for quite some time. And then on the edible side, we have Texakana Organics. This is a partnership that I've formed over many years, again, with some amazing people out of Houston, Texas. And we specialize in small batch craft edibles. So space cake hash brownies, basically, that you would think of from Amsterdam or from your high school days. Those are what we make for people that are real connoisseurs. We have craft batch chocolates. We have an in-house chocolate maker and chocolatier. So we've really elevated the edible game here in Texas as well, just trying to show people that, hey, this doesn't always have to be some terrible food experience or some sketchy smoke shop, experience. Like, this can be fun, vibrant, enjoyable, luxury, even if you want to go that far. But we're really trying to get Texans to understand, there's local brands, businesses, and retailers that actually offer good product. It isn't always just gas stations, sprayed, Chinese imported, gummies and vapes. You have to just dig through that. And so being involved in those businesses, I'm very passionate about changing that narrative and showing folks what we really have here, because we have true cannabis freedom. And we're really passionate about that. And I think all the brands plus the podcast and everything that we have going on is going to start to tell that story a little bit better.
Nice, man. Yeah, I've tried some of your guys' product before, and it's amazing. Definitely, if you're anywhere like around the country and you're interested in, some of Colton's product, I definitely recommend Texakana Organic and Geremy Greens. So shout out to you guys. So I'll kind of like move into, what's happening in Texas and beyond, because obviously, that's why we're talking here.
Yeah.
We kind of talked on the phone the other day. You kind of brought up how there's kind of like two organizations that are like controlling or regulating, or whatever the word you want to use, on Texas cannabis. There's like the Texas Department of Agriculture and then the Department of State Health Services. So maybe you can kind of talk about, just like give an overview of, I guess, what's happening with hemp in Texas, just the whole landscape.
Yeah, Texas has a deep history of fighting wars on all fronts, and that's not anything new to us. So between watching our back from the union and the federal government to watching our backs from other countries, and other organized criminal organizations that are out there, we have a war here in Texas that is it's a battle that's on all fronts for sure. So we know obviously every border of Texas, with the exception of Louisiana, basically touches some sort of cannabis empire between Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Mexico, right? So all of those have every intention on flooding our market with influence and product and beyond. So we have that fight where the hemp sector of Texas is really the recreational outlet that people have. So in order to be able to be a normal, God-loving Texan, free citizen of a state in the United States, to get medical marijuana here is a crazy program. This is a state where they have 1% THC medical marijuana. It's funny they use the marijuana word because you can't even get flower. It's only gummies and other products that you won't want. And it's ungodly expensive and absolutely impossible to access. I've yet to see any happy patients from that program. That is, of course, backed by the medical folks and all of the big corporate, hungry, greed, monkey bearing people that come down here to try to get in our market. The hemp folks are holding up the recreational sector. So this is something where you don't give your name and information to the government. You don't go on some list. You don't lose your First Amendment right or your Second Amendment right. You don't lose your kids in a custody battle. And you don't lose your job. You go and buy a federally legal product at a respectable retailer from, virtually any area of Texas. So the hemp sector is very important to uphold because what I think people across the United States are failing to realize is that they see hemp as a THCP, XYZ gas station sprayed Chinese pack that's hurting people and that is marketed to kids. That exists full force. I have never told anyone that doesn't exist in our market. It does. But we're all on the same team on the sense that the hemp market entirely is not comprised of just that. That is an area that we need to absolutely eradicate from all of our market. Plus, just in, the Attorney General of Texas is actually coming after all of the kratom things like 7-hydroxy and all these other crazy nitrous. I mean, nitrous that you would put in your car, being sold on shelves of a smoke shop or a gas station. I mean, that's absolutely insane, right? That's not part of hemp. That's not part of cannabis. We want to be very clear with that. So we have that war, right? It's medical versus hemp and recreational, and there's a lot more freedoms in the hemp side than people realize. And then you have these two organizations that are agencies in charge of regulating hemp in Texas. So like I said, I have two businesses. So on the cultivation side, we deal with the Department of Agriculture, Texas Department of Agriculture. It's called the TDA. That has a commissioner, Sid Miller, and it has an entire extensive program in conjunction with the USDA on who, how, where, what, and what happens when people cultivate and process hemp plants in the state of Texas. Once that raw material is going to go into any extraction facility or become oil or become any product, that is manufacturing. So from that point on, in order for any raw material to become a product, it is going to be regulated by the Department of State Health Services. Most of the time, these things are being put in candy, food, or something of the likes, which is why it typically falls under the DSHS because they're already handling, restaurants, food permitting, that sort of thing. The two agencies, they don't necessarily communicate, but they definitely they have two different areas respectively. Now, I believe that it's a good thing in Texas that our Department of Agriculture is not only overseeing and in charge of regulation of the cultivation of the plant, but is benefiting from having hemp and farmers having a cash crop is going to massively benefit agriculture across the state of Texas, might even say the United States, might even say the world, by allowing them to keep that in their agency and not hand that over to some government grift like the Texas Commission on Cannabis and funding politicians, organization that they could probably easily create, right? So the TDA is going to get a lot of benefit. And plus, we really always underestimate the amount of agriculture going into cannabis. To get a packaged eighth or gummies or anything like that, there's a lot of agriculture, indoor, outdoor, you name it, that goes into that. And so I think it's appropriate, absolutely appropriate, that the Texas Department of Agriculture oversees the farmers, growers, and cultivators of this plant. The DSHS, I think it's entirely appropriate that they oversee what is going into our body, right? What we're consuming, what's being sold, how it's being marketed. And they work in conjunction with things like the FDA and look at all these different federal signals that are being shined right now at us on what to do with hemp, right? They're actively regulating the age of what consumers, how old they have to be to buy it, what type of packaging it has to be, what milligram or percentage it has to be. There's all this noise over there on the actual retail and consumption side. But these agencies have a lot of responsibility. They hold a lot of weight for the fate of everything. The cultivation side, we all know it's always going to be Delta 9 by dry weight basis until the feds change anything over there. That's pretty much set in stone for the TDA. The DSHS, however, there's a lot of political pressure in Texas to change things. So instead of it being Delta 9 THC 0.3% by dry weight basis, they want to change it to total. So people think, okay, well, that makes THCA out of there. No, that makes a lot of other things out of there too. So a total THC state is going to be disastrous for full spectrum products and beyond. Even retailers, dude. I mean, talk about, now it's a liability on what temperature your store is that day and where things are stored on the shelf and all these different things. There's a lot of variables that are going to start to creep in. It's going to be difficult. And so what we're seeing now is the fallout of bad legislation, bad decisions being made, and corrupt politicians trying to force policies that were not good for Texas. And so now, we have a lot of noise around what we do, and we're going into this rulemaking program and this rulemaking session where we are now depending on the Department of State Health Services, DSHS, to start to clean up the rules and regulations surrounding consumable hemp. And the first round that they put out was absolutely insane. I mean, we're talking about insane licensing fees. We're talking about total THC changes, definition changes. I mean, things that an agency can't even do. They're trying to, basically ram it all through. And so we're going through this never-ending period of public comment, it seems, where the agency will publish kind of ignorant rules. We will go in and comment on them tactfully and respectfully, and then they will adjust those rules, release those to us again, and we will go in again in public comment until we get something that works for the state, the consumer, and for all the operators in the industry. And I know that's like a really long-winded story because there's a lot of moving parts, and that's why this is really complicated. But it's very important to know that we have basically a separation between cultivation and raw material of plant material, and we have consumable hemps, finalized goods, manufacturing, and they're regulated by two different agencies.
And so, like, how many revisions have you guys gone through with, like, the Department of State Health Services, like, at this point?
So far, just one.
Okay.
They just released rules in January, and there's been one public comment period, which we showed out in full force, and everyone came to the table with some serious solutions and some guidance on the way forward. And now we are, waiting for them to release additional rules for additional public comment. What we're hearing is that's probably going to be the end of March 30th, April 1st range, which again, it's not going to be final. It's just going to lead for more public comment. They have to open that up again, and we'll see what they propose. There's a lot of influence here with the DSHS. They are also in tandem for TABC. That's our Alcoholic Beverage Commission in Texas, and they will regulate basically any THC in a can that's a drink now. That's the only additional caveat that we have. It is 21 and up. There's a lot of success. There's a lot of momentum to make sure that we protect this industry, but protect consumers and even, of course, underage consumers for sure, from getting the wrong thing. And so there's a lot of influence in these departments from the governor and from, other elected officials and offices in the state. And so we're trying to use, of course, our public comment, but also our lobbying efforts, our connections in politics to influence every single possible decision we can when it comes down to our industry.
Gotcha. And then, so yeah, so like you kind of mentioned, like one of the things they're proposing is like a big licensing fee, correct? Like it's some sort of licensing fee on growers and retailers. And then
Right.
you said like they're also proposing, the total THC are they kind of getting that language from the recent Farm Bill provision or whatever you call it, or?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is coming from our ban bills that went through in Texas on a state level. So some of it's coming from different bills that had lines of text in there. Randomly they'll pull, hey, it has to be below total THC, or hey, it has to be a milligram, or hey, it has to be this. They're just kind of shooting in the dark. They're trying to throw things in here and see what sticks and see what we have to say. They're really not. We try to remind everyone on this. They're not in this industry. They don't know the plant. they don't know your business and they don't know your consumers, right? So it's our job to tell that story. But they don't know the chemistry, they don't know the details, they don't know the processes and the infrastructure that it takes and the small businesses that are at stake. That's another side of the story too. So we try to remind people, they're just kind of throwing their best shot at the wall and seeing what sticks and seeing what we say. And it's our job to be respectful and come to the table with real solutions. And then if we don't, we get what we get. The license hike was like, I think it was like 20,000% increase or something like that. I mean, so you're talking about a license that right now, as it stands, you can look it up online, is $150 to $250, depending on what type of business you are and what license you're applying for. Those licenses will now be $20,000 to $25,000 per location per year to do the exact same business model if they don't change any definitions or thresholds of THC or your entire formulation of every product on your shelf. So the likelihood of that being, possible is virtually zero. I mean, no small business, even if you could come up with the loan or the money to get the license, no small business is going to be able to support that if we're selling CBD isolate in a roll-on. That's been gone for 10 years now. So that's kind of where we're at. These licensing hikes are absolutely astronomical. I think that everyone from the outside in always assumes that cannabis folks are illegal drug dealers that are driving Ferraris and stashing money. And I'll tell you what, that's only the medical marijuana people. Okay? It's not us. I hire local people, local Texans in all of our businesses. We hire from our family and our friends and our local community, and we lift up mostly rural areas. So, not downtown Austin on 6th Street where all of this smoking and partying is going on. We're lifting up actual rural areas in Texas that are actually farming, growing, manufacturing, processing these products and sending them all over the United States. Our market's a hell of a lot bigger than just Texas. But they assume that we all have, the Ferraris and Bugattis and the diamond rings and everything, and that we can afford what's $25,000 to people who make 10 billion. Well, our 10 billion large industry, it costs a lot. I wish that all that 10 billion was going directly into our pocket, but for an industry being 10 billion large, you got to understand how much infrastructure and cost of business and expense is actually going into that. Plus all the money we spent lobbying and suing the state to defend ourselves and all the other stuff that we did not expect and account for. Not to mention, that billions of dollars that goes into our employees, our teams, our marketing, our logistics, our retailers, our distributors. I mean, all that is going over a wide range of facets of this industry, So I think that's something else that we're trying to explain is we do say it's veterans, we do say it's small businesses, and we mean it. We're not just saying that to be protected or hide behind that facade. That's really who it is. So when you hike these licenses up and you make regulation extreme, only the rich elites can afford it. And only, the select few can afford it. And they design it that way. We refuse to have a situation like that happen in Texas.
Yeah, that's important for sure because yeah, like the people who, I mean, this is pretty much in all industries, like the people who make the rules, they have no clue what it takes to like operate a business like this, you know what I
No.
mean? Especially a
Sometimes
cannabis
not even a
business.
business in general.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anyone who's in business knows that, what you make is a lot less than, what you are bringing in and everything. So yeah, like, that's rough. And I think probably the most fucked up thing about it all is from what I was reading, Texas is like an $8 billion hemp industry and they employ like now I think like 60,000 people,
Yeah.
are working in it. And so I mean, that's crazy, I never would have thought that like that would happen in a state like Texas, you know what I mean? Just because my perception was that, they were probably really against cannabis, etc., or hemp, just in general. But, for that to pop up in Texas is crazy. And for it to be threatened as well, is really fucked up.
Yeah, you got the hemp industry is often put in the same marijuana barrel that other companies out there selling recreational products are. You got to remember, hemp goes a lot deeper than that. Hemp can build buildings, It's lumber, concrete. It can provide fiber. It's one of the strongest fibers, if not the strongest fiber in the entire world. Hemp seed sold at every supplement store, and every hemp protein sold on HEB shelves. That all has to come from somewhere. In Texas, we say we have a couple things: cowboys and cattle, right? Well, what the fuck do the cattle eat? They're supplemented with stuff that has hemp proteins, hemp seed. There's entire cattle that are only fed hemp. And so there's an entire aspect of this industry, I think, that even goes beyond that 5 to 8 billion. I think it reaches to the 10 billions. And again, I would love to see it double if we have anything to do with it here. Hemp is ingrained in a lot of society across the United States. There's a lot of agriculture that goes into this industry, and it's not coincidence that we've been able to keep up. There's obviously infrastructure and human capital out there in Texas that can obviously bring on acreage or greenhouses or square footage of hemp for whatever the need may be, whether it's for grandma's elbows or for your clothes on your back, or for the feed that we're feeding our cattle in order to supply food to all of Texas and beyond. There's an aspect of hemp that touches every single sector of that. And I think people forget about that. And I think Texas is the perfect final frontier to kind of bring that home and remind everyone. We all love to think about cannabis as this, recreational psychedelic that you can enjoy. And we like to think that all cannabis cultivation happens in California on a mountain somewhere, but that's not the case anymore. That's old school. That's old news, man. It's everywhere. It's a lot of different walks of life. Different types of people are cultivating this, are using this, and times are changing. So if Texas can continue to change with it, we'll be at the top, and we'll be leading on the forefront of this into the new era of hemp and cannabis for sure.
Oh yeah, what kind of like what's the background of hemp in Texas? And then like how has the cannabis market in Texas evolved since you got started? So like whenever the Farm Bill came about in like 2018, is that kind of when, a lot of people started growing more hemp, and then like what did the evolution look like of all that?
Yeah, so let's go back. I mean, Texas is obviously has a deep-seated history in a lot of different areas. One of the biggest things is we obviously had a lot of plantations here, a lot of corn, cotton, peanut production, and hemp as well. So I live in a city called Hempstead, Texas. Literally, like, you can't make that up. It's called Hempstead. You literally translate that. It literally means cannabis farm. That's what Hempstead means, right? So that little township has been there forever. It was an old hemp plantation. They were growing hemp for fiber for many wars that the United States had over many, many long years. Obviously, with the change of how things went with that business model, they don't grow hemp or anything there anymore, and that changed into our now Waller County Hempstead area that I live in. But we had a deep history of that, and we're trying to bring that back in a good light. But Texas was, anything that has to do with agriculture, Texas has always been a producer of it for quite some time. So when we talk about the new era and the new age of hemp and cannabis coming here, it definitely kicked off in 2018, 2019. So we started to hear what the feds were doing in 2018. We saw the Farm Bill. We know that that certain levels of THC and certain strains of cannabis were now no longer on the controlled substances list or any of that, and it was being given to farmers as a cash crop. They like to say, oh, we only did that because we wanted a bunch of rope and we wanted a bunch of lumber and material. They're lying, because they set it up and literally wrote words and laws and language in there to make sure that we could do everything. If they just wanted it to be for fiber, they would have literally expressly written that in a law to make sure that this stuff didn't happen. So this industry gave the farmers a cash crop, and I can confirm that because whether you grow outdoor long hair or long fiber, short fiber hemp for industrial, whether you grow it for biomass to be made into oil and products and consumables, it again is agriculture that's happening there. And so we wanted to definitely protect a lot of that in this, and I think bringing this into the new era. We wanted to make sure that farmers were given that opportunity and that there was a market for it. And the TDA immediately adopted the 2018 Farm Bill language into their own language for the Texas program in 2019. So like literally right after, as soon as they were able to, they basically mirrored the federal language and allowed farmers in Texas to start taking advantage of the cash crop of hemp and start to cultivate it. Even our commissioner Sid Miller jumped in and started cultivating hemp, and I believe still does to this day to some extent, some capacity. So that really kicked off the whole consumable hemp or hemp is here and blah blah blah. So the hottest products were definitely the roll-ons, the topicals, the CBD only. You know, it was very like toes in the water. Let the soccer moms try it out. Let grandma try it out. And if she's okay and there's no reefer madness, then we'll try the next thing, right? And then we had the Delta 8 debacle, and this is what I still believe was both essential but detrimental at the same time. You know, I think if we would have not done the Delta 8 route and would have waited and pushed more on the limits, the Delta 9 limits, and you know, done things maybe a little more methodically, we wouldn't have had to defend ourselves so fiercely. And I don't think alternative cannabinoids or synthetic cannabinoids would have gotten as proliferated as they did. But Delta 8 definitely came on the scene, and when Delta 8 hit the scene, I was working inside of some businesses, and I quickly, you know, we kind of had like we looked to our left and right, and we were like, this is THC, right? And they're like, yep, I mean, it's Delta 8, but it's THC. It's virtually the same effect. We're like, okay, and it's for sale legally on shelves. And we were like, yep. And the attorneys were like, yep. And so we were like, okay, I guess like it's legal then. Like cannabis is legal at that point. And so my venture did not dive into the alt cannabinoids. We resisted the alt cannabinoids with every single fiber in our being. We have to this day. You'll still see that if we, you know, we have some stuff on Geremy Greens and Texakana Organics. If you go look at the website, nothing on there is going to have any alternate cannabinoids or any cannabinoids you've never heard of. It's all completely natural from what we are able to control. We make products for what we like to consume. But the Delta 8 thing really took THC to the next level. It started to get THC on the map and enter it into the conversation the same way that CBD entered hemp and cannabis in general. And then, you know, there's some of those wild characters, some of which have been on my show. They started putting out, you know, 20 milligram gummies of THC, Delta 9 THC. And we were like, you know, what are you doing? Like, no way. And he was like, no, you know, by weight, this is legal and it's all natural. And so that also started, I would say, like that next even level after Delta 8, maybe this is probably 2020 going into 2021 now. You know, people are asking for THCA. People are asking for Delta 9. People are not wanting to consume alt cannabinoids because they're getting, you know, negative effects, a headache, or they don't feel good, or they just don't like it anymore, or they felt like they were getting addicted even. Like there were all these things happening to people that were in that alt cannabinoid, sketchy synthetic market. They're buying from gas stations. So when they buy it from a reputable retailer or a brand, they have a good experience. And all of that started to really kick up. I would say it's still in motion. I mean, it's 2026, at the top of 2026. I would say we're really just now getting cannabis or THC to the real top of the conversation and to be, you know, a household thing that people just talk about. Virtually everyone in Texas has tried it, smoked it, ate it, you know, consumed it by a drink or something. And it's a non-issue pretty much at this point. I think 70% of even conservatives in Texas don't care about hemp. They want it to be legal and left alone. So that's kind of the whole progression. It comes from literally way back in our past to our future. Hemp has been here, and it is a part of Texas. The conversation has been opened up rapidly over the last 5 years for sure.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool history. You living in Hempstead and kind of like the background of that. And then the alt
Yeah.
cannabinoid thing is such a interesting topic because like I'm one of these people who have, I just like quality product and seeing that um kind of like makes me feel weird, but then at the same time like I understand like why it's needed, the progression of the industry, kind of like what you mentioned, like we got to push the boundaries, get it where we can. So I
Yeah.
definitely don't knock, people who are kind of like trying to create different products and stuff like that, but It's definitely interesting. Like the whole history is interesting. One thing that I wanted to ask you is we've talked about this before, and I thought it's kind of like an interesting perspective. Like, why was the whole hemp industry like never a loophole?
Yeah, I love that question. It's my favorite, actually. I'm gonna get the reason why tattooed on my forehead, I think. Essentially, hemp was never a loophole. The loophole word is a smear campaign started by, I would say, large medical and corporate marijuana companies, to brainwash you into believing that hemp is anything different than what they're peddling to you. So here's the problem. In 2018, the Farm Bill legalized hemp. It removed THC from hemp at 0.3% Delta 9 by a dry weight basis off of the Controlled Substances Act. It removed it entirely. So now farmers can take hemp and grow it, process it, and the industry can be created. It was federally legal to operate hemp businesses in the United States, meaning I could operate in Texas, I could operate in Colorado, I could operate in California, I could operate in Florida, you name it. It's federally legal to own hemp products, operate a hemp business, and create products that are, compliant within regulation. You can sign up for a bank account at a major federal bank. That would be Bank of America, Chase Bank, maybe even Wells Fargo. Who knows who allows hemp banking at this point in time? But that was always available. We were always able to process credit cards, take money, take checks and deposit them in a bank account, pay our taxes on that money as well, file for several write-offs, tax deductions. We can file for grants. We can file for loans, small business loans, all kinds of different things that we are open to because we are a federally legal industry. You don't have a federally legal industry with federal banking and a ton of support off of a loophole. You're basically saying that the people that run the largest banks in the world and the federal government are absolute buffoon, imbecile idiots, and they don't know what they did. They've been processing all this money fraudulently, laundering it for all these hemp companies to the tune of billions of dollars. And you think no one would have paid attention? I just don't believe that that's true. It's written into an actual law in the 2018 Farm Bill. Now, let's go talk about the medical marijuana or the rec cannabis markets that are from state to state. Are you able to take that cash money that you make or the illegal ATM transaction you do to charge people on their debit card, are you able to put that money in a federal bank? No, the answer is no, absolutely not. Are you able to process credit cards with a major credit card processor? The answer is no, absolutely not. Are you able to take tax deductions and write off equipment and expenses? The answer is no, absolutely not. Are you able to take your product and sell your product across state lines, over the internet, by mail? No, the answer is absolutely not. If you wanted to go set up your business in another state, would you be able to take that same license, the same employees, the same infrastructure and everything and go over state lines without having to relicense, rehire, re-background check, get into a new track and trace system, all the sorts? Would you be able to do that? The answer is absolutely not. Why? Because state marijuana or cannabis programs are not federally legal. That is the loophole. It doesn't take an attorney or a lawmaker or an expert to show you the facts that have said for almost a decade now, federal legal money from hemp is okay and it's legal. Federally illegal money from federally illegal state-sanctioned cannabis programs is federally illegal. It doesn't matter what you try to do to make it otherwise. So that's clean and clear, okay? And it has nothing to do with any other, it's lower percent or it's this or it's that or it's different cannabinoids entirely. That's a lie, and no, it's not. It has to do with compliant genetics. That's basically it. And where you start and what levels your products stay at throughout the entirety of their existence until they are ingested or consumed by a consumer. All of that is trackable, it's regulated, and it is federally legal, which is why hemp companies are having massive success, and marijuana companies or cannabis companies in these state programs are struggling. And it's not because they're bad operators. It's not because they're bad business people. They don't know what they're doing. That's not the case. They're in a program that's set up to fail. You're in a rat wheel. It will never get you to where you want to go or where you want to take the plant or where it deserves to go. It's the program. And we didn't want to touch that illegal program, that federally illegal program with a 10-foot pole because of the money. The money thing is so important. The international banking, federal banking, all the stuff that you have access to in the hemp program is non-existent in recreational cannabis. So we are not only going to smoke you on the amount of opportunities and commerce and revenue that we can do, but we don't have the handcuffs that you do. And that's the biggest kicker for me is trying to convert some of these guys that are solid business people and are operators that can crush it if they would just put a 4-letter word on their product and make it federally compliant rather than trying to appease the corrupt government that they have in their specific state or their specific market. And it's a shame because this is what has led us to this point in cannabis where you have the Kim Rivers of the world who are basically maniacal evil people trying to take over all of the best real estate and basically make people smoke themselves into slavery with mid-level product that is terrible and really expensive, and they're the only ones that are going to own it. Yet the small businesses out there, we can band together. We can become an unstoppable force, an industry that is federally legal and too big to fail. But it's like sometimes when you throw a life raft out to some of these cannabis operators that are drowning, they don't want to grab the life raft because of the name that's on it or the color that it is. I think that's a stupid way to go down. I think you should swallow your pride, switch your stuff over to the federally legal program, and laugh all the way to the literal bank where you can literally federally bank your money. Everybody who's gone down in cannabis, they always like to get you for the money laundering, the RICO, all these other federal drug charges that they can get you on. They can't do that if you're in the hemp industry. They actually have to protect you. So it's a whole different conversation. The hemp stuff was never a loophole. Here's what's a loophole. A loophole is some fucking loser smoke shop owner or gas station owner that wants to basically poison the youth of Texas or even just the society in Texas by giving them trash, kratom, 7-hydroxy, Percocet knockoff, stomp compounded pills in some nasty environment that God knows where that came from. And then right next to that, sell some THCP, synthetic alternate cannabinoid from China. I've seen the Chinese labs. They're pumping that shit in here, and it's definitely in gas stations. Or you're selling nitrous oxide or whatever so people can basically have an unlimited supply of whippets. I mean, yeah, adults want to make their own decisions, and I think they should. But that's not hemp. That's not cannabis. That's a loophole that's not being enforced, and that's a whole nother problem, and our attorney general is going to go after that here in this state. But that people like to kind of smear hemp and make it look like it's not a viable industry or an option, but you're literally discussing things that aren't even hemp. They're literally not even hemp. So I think that people are misguided on that whole federal legality loophole thing. And I always throw it back at them. The people that like to say I'm a loophole, I ask them, how did you pay for the weed when you went to a dispensary last time? I guarantee you went to a cash machine inside the dispensary and you put your debit card in there, and then you got out actual legal tender, right? So you got federal money out of your own bank, and then you turn that money over for a basically a narcotic. Technically, you turn that money over to this establishment, and then they sell you this narcotic for cash. That's illegal. And then on top of that, where does that money go? Does it go back into our banks? Does it go back into our community? Do they pay their taxes with it? No, so we print more, we keep up. They put that through Canada, they wash that through the Canadian stock market, put it back in here, and now they're living their lives like royalty. Is that something that we want to all foot the bill for? Is that where we all want to take cannabis? It isn't where I wanted to take it, and that's why I'm in the hemp sector, and that's why I've been in hemp since day one. I've never touched marijuana. What a racist, derogatory word to put on this industry. I think that's crazy. And anybody who's gone along with that is absolutely delusional. I have no patience.
It's crazy, bro. Yeah, like the 7-0 stuff is a whole other topic, but like it is fucked up that, that's happening, that it's kind of like people are grouping that all together. Because two totally different things. From what I've seen, that's basically like a smokable perk, from what I've
Yeah,
seen.
it
I've
is,
seen
bro.
people, yeah, be able to like vape it and stuff. But I know you can also like take it orally or some other form of it. I don't know too much about it, but I
Well,
think
my
it's
thing is,
fucked up.
it's always at the kids, right? They're always like, "Oh, well, we gotta help kids," and kids are getting this shit, and they're getting fucked up. Well, kids are also probably getting pills like 7-hydroxy or whippets or worse, whether it's from a gas station or a smoke shop or their friend or somebody else. And it's funny because you find some kid fucked up in the bathroom at high school. When he comes to, he's going to tell you, "Oh, I just hit a vape," or "Oh, I just smoked some weed," because it's like that's the easy way out with your parents or with the doctors now. So you don't want to have to explain that sucked some chemical out of a metal tube and got high. Yeah, that's a little bit of a more difficult conversation to have with your parents, isn't it? So of course they blame it on hemp or cannabis or this vape I had or this pre-roll I got or whatever, and it's just not true.
It's fucked up. Yeah, and like what you said, it's like it's so true. The hemp industry, it kind of seems like, a life raft for a lot of these like state markets. But my question is like, is that in Texas? Is that because, like you said earlier, the, Department of Ag kind of adopted the same language from the Farm Bill? Is that why Texas has been able to like really prop this up? Because from what I understand in other states, like maybe California or other, they've kind of, not allowed hemp to thrive. I don't know. You probably know a lot better than me, but is it because of Texas adopting those rules that like really allowed it to thrive?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at other markets that are like legal cannabis markets or rec markets, you look at those and you see that most of them demonize hemp. They usually make it illegal um, to have any hemp products or anything like that, which is really crazy. It's literally the government of a state saying, "Hey, this plant is okay if you buy it from me and you pay me off, but it's not okay if you don't buy it from me and you don't pay me off." That's literally what that means. There's no other way to look at that. If you don't see it that way, go literally back to the civics class in school. The government is telling you that one thing from them is okay and one thing that's not from them that's the same thing is not. That's crazy. Well, they usually do that because the hemp program always has less red tape, always, and that's not less regulation. That's less red tape, meaning I pay $150 to start my small business and get a license, not $150,000, right? That to me is red tape. It's the same license to do the same thing, process a plant into consumable products or oils or whatever you may be. It's the same process, same equipment. But the difference is my licensing fee allows me, a small business, any common man, blue collar equipment operator out there to buy a CO2 machine and start processing. But the $150,000 sure does keep me out of that, doesn't it? So the red tape, I think, is the reason why a lot of places, when they get these recreational markets going in their state, they start to put all this red tape up around, who can play in the marijuana or cannabis sandbox. And we sure as hell aren't going to let the hemp people who don't pay the licensing fee and don't pay us off, don't play the same game as us as far as all this regulation and red tape and track and trace and all this shit. Why are we going to let them be our neighbor and sell it all over the United States and process their money and not have to pay exorbitant fees and not have to hide money from taxes and all this other problems? Why would we let them do that? That would make us look stupid. So we'll just make hemp look like it's terrible, gas station poison that'll kill you, and we'll have them banned.
Yeah, you
So
saw
that's
that
pretty much
with
the answer that everyone has to solving their hemp industry when they have a recreational cannabis market. And it's always the
yeah,
wrong choice.
that's
But
exactly
with
what you
Texas,
see in California, because California has totally demonized hemp, and now obviously like, and we all know how bad of a market California is when
and
it
you want
comes
to
to
know where the worst
taxes.
product on the market comes from? The worst product on the market in the hemp market comes from California. It either comes from last year's harvest that's backdoored or that circumvents your track and trace, or it literally comes from Chinese imported, God knows what cannabinoids from God knows what lab. And it's not xenophobic, it's fact. I can literally show you these
Yep.
people that are doing this, that are literally hurting people with these research chemicals, and it all comes through places like California. In Texas, we don't have that. We don't have these big secret Chinese grows or Bulgarian grows and human trafficking and all this other drama. That's a Democrat state thing. That's a California state thing. Period. I mean, like it or not, that's the truth. We don't have that. If I threw a net and caught some cannabis growers, I guarantee you every single one of them is pretty much a born and raised Texan. And that's what we want. And I think the biggest misconception is that the hemp operators are the ones doing this. No, it's the marijuana operators that are the ones putting the most tainted product out there in the market. And there are certain operators in general that they don't care if it's marijuana, cannabis, hemp, research chemicals. They just want your money. They don't give a shit. And that's a different issue. That has nothing to do with regulation. That's a people issue. So, they like to always stomp out hemp because hemp in every market can go toe to toe with marijuana or a legal or a state-ran cannabis industry, and we will smoke you because there's no way you're going to outperform even the smallest brand when they have 50 state legal e-commerce that they can capitalize on. We're going to smoke you.
Yeah,
And when we didn't take the first handout that the government gave us, listen, medical marijuana program has been in Texas since like 2014. That's a long time. If everyone would have jumped in on that, we'd all still be stuck in there making 1% irrelevant product for 3 times the price, and we'd all be competing for the same 15,000 patients that actually signed up, and it would be a disaster. It'd be just the exact same disaster that it is today. But we waited. We didn't take the first handout just because we were black market cannabis growers tired of the feds coming after us. We were so eager to get out of the dark ages, or we were eager to grow and make more money. We were like, hey, listen, this shit's outlawed now. It has been. It will be. Who knows? Let's just see how this goes. And we saw the medical people fail and fail and then fail and then come back and try to shut us down and then fail and then come back and try to lobby against us again and then fail. So time and time again, it proves that the medical marijuana program, at least in Texas, I would say virtually everywhere, is set up to fail. It's never supposed to be legal. It's all supposed to wash their corrupt, evil, illegal money. And so now, in Texas, we have a big battle of like trying to change all of that noise that all that baggage, man. I mean, we got so many good operators here that, we just want to put the best product forward and stop all this mess. So people are still flooding our market with product that's trash and still calling it ours and still putting hemp on, every label that's got THCP and all this other shit. Like, I've never made THCP. Like, as a veteran in this industry for 10 years, I don't even know the process. I'm sure you start with CBD, but I don't even know the process for that shit. And all that stuff started out of prohibition. Every time you prohibit something as a government, as a state, someone in some lab somewhere or some garage is going to look at a workaround. That's how Delta 8 was created, out of prohibition. It was created to literally push the boundary and to send a giant fuck you to the state and say, hey, listen, like, we're going to put Delta 8 out here. We're going to leak out this THC that you literally didn't list verbatim, and it's technically legal. And then that starts this whole thing. So, it's a weird place, but I think that the marijuana and cannabis people, if they would stop, look, and listen and check out the hemp sector of what's possible here, like you said, it's a life raft. We have nothing but a bright future on the horizon if we can get behind something that the feds can't come after us for.
So one thing that I wanted to talk to you about is the Delta 8 thing, like, is a crazy topic in general. Like, I heard the whole story of like that, how it really entered the market. From what I understand, it was all from like CBD, but I guess that's kind of like a whole different topic. Yeah, it was
basically,
like the oversupply of CBD whenever the Farm Bill first popped off. Like, they eventually learned how they could like chemically convert it to Delta 8. Is that kind of how it happened?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it has to do with like the oversaturation. I think it really was just like there was a vacuum of demand. People weren't going to buy the CBD gummies and eat them for the rest of their lives if they didn't feel anything. Now, yeah, if you told them, hey, in 6 months, of consistent use, your joints and muscles will feel better and you'll really get the full effect of using this. But a CBD isolate, we all know that's a fucking snake oil scam. You know what I mean? So people started to just get wise to that, and then demand started to explode, and people were asking for more pain relief or for more euphoric effects. And so, of course, THC is the answer to that, and that's where I think a lot of this came from. is the vacuum of demand. We didn't have something that the people were wanting, and in order for us to stay in business as small businesses, we had to figure out a solution for that, and we did. And Delta 8 is essentially, it's basically, if you've ever seen Breaking Bad, the same equipment is required to manufacture like alt cannabinoids. So you basically take a mother liquor of like CBD or CBG and you manipulate it chemically through a chemical process in a lab, and you can virtually make the chemical makeup of any cannabinoid that you know. And so the right people with the right chemist or a little bit of the right technology and knowledge can easily start to manipulate basic cannabinoids like CBD or CBG that are virtually in every single plant, every single product that's full spectrum. They can start manipulating that and making, distillates and isolates of different cannabinoids that they want to by a chemical process. Whether you agree with that or not, I mean, it's possible and it happens. I think Delta 8 really came out of that necessity, and because they were trying to be so prohibitive of THC, and it was they tried to keep the Delta 9 by dry weight under wraps, and a lot of people were, I think, really nervous to believe that was true. And then once we kind of broke the camel's back with D8 and we got a THC out there, it was like, okay, well, this is all open season now. And as much as I hate the fact that Delta 8 exists, it did do what it was intended to do, which was really open the floodgates and not even just on weed or cannabis, like it's full spectrum products. The Delta 8 helped us push more full spectrum products. People understood what that term meant. They understood what to look for if something has THC in it. Like what kind of feeling, what kind of pain relief can you get? Try it out. It started to open the floodgates on that demand, which that all led to more manufacturing, more cultivation, everything. And everything from Texas is better. If it's from Texas, grown in Texas, harvested in Texas, processed in Texas, sold in Texas, I'll put my name, the Texas Growers Podcast name, and the giant Texas stamp of approval on it that it's going to be better, high quality, and more natural than almost anything, or at least comparable in any other market, period.
You met with Governor Abbott. What did you like specifically talk about? So, like, I know you said you guys talked about like how you guys should actually approach legalization and regulation, but like, can you
Yeah.
dive into the specifics? Like, how should we legalize and regulate, the industry as a whole, not just in Texas, maybe even like federally, because I'm sure you got a lot of insight about that.
Yeah, so meeting with the governor was actually courtesy of the Hemp Industry and Farmers of America. It's a lobbying group, an advocacy group that we have here working with us in Texas, but also federally. And then also, I've been propped up by another group time and time again, the Texas Hemp Business Council. I work really intimately with the Texas Hemp Business Council on more of a grassroots, ground level effort to make sure that all of our operators and all of our consumers are vigilant and mobilized. So those groups really are the ones that put me in the room with the governor. My pops has worked with him several times over the past few decades in various capacities. I'm kind of connected to that circle, if you will, of kind of politicians and influence in Texas, thankfully. But when we went to the room the first time, so we've actually met with the governor several times on this issue over the past few months, but the first time was at the Capitol, and so it was very professional. It was very factual. So he had his governor hat on, he had his judicial hat on. He was asking how we could realistically regulate this industry in this market. And basically what we told him was, hey, you already have regulations, you just don't have enforcement. So we could talk around in circles at this table about all the things that we could do, but if they're never enforced, it doesn't matter. So can we have more labs? Yes, we could have labs to service for texting in every single county across Texas. Could we have more stringent retail requirements or an increase in licensing fee? Yeah, of course we can. Of course, I think there's a threshold for that. All that is realistic, but with no enforcement, it doesn't ever matter. And that's the biggest issue. We then talked about, was what the lieutenant governor of Texas saying true? And we were explaining those claims away with facts of like, hey, kids are not jumping in front of school buses to kill themselves because they vaped off of a pen one time, right? That's absolutely asinine, and there's no evidence. So we were basically giving him a lot of our evidence and our rebuttals and objections to these types of claims so that he was ready to go back and forth with different politicians or elected officials. And basically, you know, I haven't really said this, but I'll say it on your podcast. It was always to me going to be hard for him to make a bad piece of policy law. He has a very, very long history in Texas of being a Supreme Court justice and a district attorney. So if a bad piece of policy or law comes across his desk and he goes with it, that's already like going to go against his character and be kind of a bad mark on his whole entire resume. Then you got the fact that his mortal enemy essentially is the one that's really pushing this. And Dan Patrick is definitely someone who would love to be the governor of Texas and would love a lot more power and influence in politics across the United States. I don't think he'll get it. But the governor saw this also as an opportunity to kind of put that fire out and dampen that guy maybe once and for all on this issue. So the political capital was there, and plus we served it as a conservative issue to the governor. I mean, this is the most influential governor in the United States. He has the largest conservative base, a huge conservative state. This is kind of coming out of nowhere. Nobody really thought that we would be talking about hemp or cannabis as a major headline in Texas, and now we are. So we've got to get this right. And we really wanted to make this a conservative issue for him because the 65 and older church-going Texans that are out there, they're living in pain, and they're tired of pharmaceuticals just the way that everyone else is. And if you can give these folks some relief in one form or fashion, I think they deserve to have access to it. And it's always been interesting that a guy from the handicap community was going to try to tell veterans or other handicapped folks or anyone living with any discomfort that, hey, you can't have access to something, but except for if you buy it from like our corrupt program over here. So I just didn't see that as ever being on the table. And we made sure in our governor meeting, we laid out every fact and figure and solution we possibly could. And I think we presented a case that was like, hey, we're here, we're large, we're serious. Whatever political money or donations you might be able to get from some larger industries, we definitely can match that, but we can't match it if we disappear overnight. And so, we kind of, I think, positioned ourselves in a way that made us valuable and not just a scab to get picked. And I think that there was very, very important people at the table with me at that meeting that also helped bring home that entire conversation on the fact that, there's a vacuum, there's a demand, cartels are going to get rich, other states with programs are going to get rich. These medical marijuana people are still not going to be able to keep up with demand. So there's all these different issues that Texas is going to face. And at the end of the day, you're going to be the governor that took something away from hardworking Texans. They're not going to forget that in November at the elections and in the ballot box. And I hope that they do remember that. I hope Texans out there do remember the shit that we went through and how the government continuously tries to encroach on our rights and force things upon us that we do not ask for, that we do not want, against our will. So remember that, the ballot box, and remember that Dan Patrick, if it wasn't weed, it would have been abortion. If it wasn't abortion, it would have been, the school vouchers and your right to choose your children's education. It would have been something. Like something was going on the chopping block and something was going to get used in some dirty politics. And hemp just became that thing. But we finalized that with the governor. And I think that first initial meeting was really good with bringing facts to the forefront and figures and letting him see behind the curtain into the industry of who's actually here operating, who's showing up to these testimonies and to these hearings. And then also, I think after that, we had a private lunch with the governor. And then I was actually just a few nights ago at a dinner event with the governor. And this guy is absolutely a different person outside of the Capitol. He's more of a friendly, jovial, joking person that has a really very, very interesting personality. And you can tell he's just very smart. Nothing really gets past him. But the type of insight and information we were able to get when we were off site with the governor and having some of our private meetings with him, I am nothing but optimistic about the way that hemp will go in Texas and especially even across the United States. So
That's dope to hear. Yeah, that's cool that you've met with them and talked about all this because yeah, it's important. We gotta figure it out and everything. One big topic that I wanted to talk about that you touched on it a little bit, but I think this is super important. So like, you know, you talked about you posted a video on Texas Growers podcast recently talking about the blacklist, and you
Yeah.
know, I'm really passionate about just like making sure big weed doesn't take over. And like you were telling me about how, big weed is really trying to take over the Texas market through the medical program. You've talked about it a little bit, but talk about both levels of this. Like how is big weed trying to take over Texas, but also just like the market as a whole, the federal the market across the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's all started as a monopoly. The idea of medical marijuana was crafted by some corrupt, evil individuals that knew they could prey on the gray area of what this industry would become in order to start laundering money and avoid paying federal taxes. Medical marijuana, these large corporations, what they do is they go to these untapped markets. We've seen this happen from state to state across the US. And every time they show up in a new state, they run the same playbook. And thankfully, they're very open about their playbook. And so what they do is they come in and they lobby for medical marijuana, and they get a really, I would say, restrictive or irrelevant medical marijuana program established in some of these conservative states or these uncharted territories. And when they get this worthless medical marijuana program, they'll get in there and they'll start to sink a bunch of money in it, and they'll fail. And they'll have to take on more debt and more capital in order to survive. And they'll turn around, they'll take that debt and capital, and they'll start lobbying people in government. And they'll say, hey, listen, you let us in here. You charged us $500,000 for this license. You created this program, and now we're unsuccessful. No one's signing up. We can't seem to get as many patients and get as many customers. We can't sell enough cannabis products. We're not making money. We're losing money. We're hemorrhaging. What they do is they start to lobby for recreational marijuana. So they'll say, hey, listen, we got a head start on this. Medical is obviously slow boat. Not a lot of people want to go to their doctor or put themselves on a list. So let's just open up medical or recreational marijuana too. So we already have medical. We can also have recreational. We can split our dispensaries in half and have card holders go to the left and non-card holders go to the right. And, guess who's 10 years or light years ahead of every small business that would ever want to get into recreational marijuana? The medical marijuana people. And so they already start with a head start, which is a virtual monopoly on the entire system. And when they have recreational, they still don't make money, and they can't bank, and it's a whole that's chaos we spoke about just a few minutes ago. But that becomes unsuccessful. So of course the next scab to pick is, okay, well, listen, it's hemp. The reason we're not successful, the reason why marijuana is not paying their taxes, and we're not as successful as we said we would be with our Bugattis and Ferraris and everything we promised, is because the hemp industry is taking money from our pocket. They're cutting into our market share because they're unregulated and they can make dangerous products. Does this sound familiar? So they do this from state to state to state, and it works with Democrat corrupt money laundering governments from state to state. You can tell if you have, you look at the state that has Somali daycares. They have a medical marijuana program. It's clear. I mean, things just add up like that, right? So. And again, and that's not even to make it political. I'm just calling it as it is. That's literally fact. You can go from state to state and look at how politics aligns with these marijuana programs, and it's all laid out there for you. Now, the blacklist has made their landing here in Texas. As much as we try to resist, I'll tell you this. The Department of Public Safety is the largest law enforcement agency in Texas. It might even be one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the entire world. I definitely think it's one of the most feared law enforcement agencies in the entire world. Our state troopers are the absolute epitome of Texas law enforcement and law and order. Think Chuck Norris, but he actually looks good and looks professional. These guys are the best of the best. That's the same exact Department of Public Safety that will have your car torn apart for a gram of marijuana and put you in jail for it because you didn't buy it from the medical program in Texas, which is also controlled and operated by, you guessed it, Cody, the Department of Public Safety. So the cops in Texas are literally arresting people for weed that's not from them and then and then choosing to protect or not the people who bought the weed that is from them, because your medical marijuana status here means absolutely nothing on the side of the road. So all that is a scam. And so when the blacklist landed here, we had tried to apply multiple Texas-based vertically integrated operators in the hemp scene were able to not only apply, which was a multiple $1,000 application fee just to put your name on the application, and then proved financially that they could afford the licensing fee year after year, were still not awarded any, not even one, of the 9 additional medical marijuana licenses that were given in Texas. So, as a Texas consumer, which industry or which program would you think has it out best for you? I'll let you guys decide. But it's the biggest problem is that these corrupt people, literally, Trulieve has had someone die in their facility. That's not slander because it's fact. They've had someone die. So these medical people that want to, provide all this medicine for patients, they can't even take care of their own employees under their own roof, under their own watch. Don't buy their stuff, and don't buy into this scam that these people have any innovation going on or any laboratories, or that they're leading, marijuana medicine in any capacity, because they're not. That is all a front to get their program started, convert them into recreational, and have them be marijuana, because marijuana never goes legal. That's the whole game. So
Yeah.
these blacklist operators that just got licenses, it'll take them 10 years to catch up, dude. It'll take them 10 years to come in here, get vertically integrated, get a facility, get their products distributed, get patients. They're never going to catch up. But in the meantime, we got to fight their other tricks that they do behind the scenes, because they're not coming here to be successful business operations. They're coming here to work the system. And we're not going to let that happen in Texas. And I tell you what, the governor is not going to really have that either. We definitely have our eyes on the medical program and the operators on the blacklist and what they're doing, what they're capable of. And so, hey, if I'm in Texas and I have my hemp industry intact, operating business as usual, and I have a couple of these blacklisted medical marijuana people that I know are never going to provide decent product, I'll take it, because that means the cartel's not here bothering me as much. That means the Chinese grows and all this other shit that's flooding the market with, virtually non-existent prices. I don't know how you can come here and grow cannabis and give it away for basically free. That's absolutely crazy. Must show you that it's laced with other things that they want you to ingest in your body. But that's a whole nother fucking conversation. But we don't have that here. So, these blacklist folks will continue to come in here and grow moldy weed and try to sell it to you and remediate it and put it in a microwave and do all these dirty, nasty things that they're allowed to do. But again, you have the ability to choose a local hemp company that operates off natural, locally sourced product, just like you would source food from a farmer's market.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand with big weed. I think I told you the other day I've actually worked, for a big weed company in Illinois, not in Texas, but in Illinois. And I won't say the company name for obvious reasons, but yeah, it's a shit show, bro. Like, I left as soon as I saw it, but, mold, dirty cultivation facilities have absolutely no idea what they're doing. I've been lucky enough to be in a lot of cultivation facilities at this point. I've seen the good ones and I've seen the bad ones, and it's always big weed who, has
Yep.
very bad ones. But yeah, that
Because
it's
that
just fucked
small
up.
craft grower, he's never gonna let his place go to shit like that. It's the corporate money hungry, tech bros and real estate moguls and people like Kim Rivers. They don't care about that. They just want the money and the avenue to wash their cash. The thing is I how can I maintain a cleaner grow room with half of the technology and virtually no money when these people have mold from floor to ceiling in these places that have all the latest and greatest technology and a full-time staff and unlimited budget? Like, you got to be kidding me. You have to literally not care. You have to be wanting to poison people to be able to do that. I think it's absolutely insane. And they get away with it, like, despite having all these SEC filings, despite going to prison for fraud, despite having someone die on the floor of one of their facilities, they still get a license here in Texas. Like it's nothing. But it's the same game. Take note. of why certain CEOs of certain medical and corporate cannabis companies were in the room at the descheduling signing in the Oval Office, or the rescheduling signing, I'm sorry, in the Oval Office. And there's people. I like to say I am Kim's worst nightmare, because I'm using her playbook, but I'm doing it the right way. And because I'm doing it the right way, I'll basically be untouchable. And so I'm taking her playbook of, yes, influence policy, influence politicians. Definitely go in and make sure that your narrative is the one that is heard the most often and the loudest for the people that it matters that they hear it. And that's what we've been doing. So, kudos to them for kind of showing us the way through, and kudos to Texas and all of us and the federal government for allowing a hemp program to continue to still be here standing and competing against these people. Because, like I said, the hemp money goes back into the community. We pay our taxes. Someone paid sales tax on it. All these taxes you see on the receipt at a dispensary, those go to politicians' pockets. Those don't build schools. Those don't build your highways. Those go right into politicians' pockets that let that marijuana be sold. It's the mafia mentality. It's the mafia style. So that's what people will die on their own hill for this. That hemp is not real, and Texas doesn't know real weed, and we don't have cannabis. And if that's what you think, that's cool. Have fun living under that rock for the rest of your life. We have an amazing community here. It's basically built on the backs of hardworking Texans that love this state and love this community, love these people. And we're not here to poison you and take your money. We're here to provide you something that helps you in life and allows you to get back out there.
Cool. It's cool to see that you understand kind of like this whole like chessboard, because like that's what I've always said. Like these people at these big weed companies, like, these guys come from like a background in like law and like real estate. So like they really understand like how to, take advantage of like legal gray area and, kind of take advantage
Yep.
of unsuspecting people. But it's good that you actually have that background so you can kind of like see through and wave through the bullshit. It's important. That kind of leads into some of these like other questions, like you kind of brought up remediation. How are we on time, by the way? Are you good on time?
No, we're good. I was just seeing what's up with Paul up there. We have another person coming in the studio at 1, so if we just wrap in the
Okay,
next 20 minutes, that'll give them time to turn it over.
for
But yeah, go
sure.
ahead.
Let's
Ask
do
about
it.
that, because that's a good question.
Yeah, so like, we have one of the questions here. Thoughts on like remediation and some of the practices used by Big Zaw?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I can't. I'm not an expert, so I can't like speak on it as if I have ever been through this process. I haven't. I don't claim to. I do know a little bit about the remediation process, or what they are going to be allowed to do to that product in order to deem it compliant or safe. I flat out don't agree with that. Now, in Texas and in our program, I can say that we don't have any of that. If something does not test correctly, and if you don't get the rightful panel back from your lab, you have to destroy the product in one of these certain methods and document that for the state. And so there is no, oh, let's just clean it up a little bit. Let's just spray it with something. Let's microwave it. Let's put something, to this material to change it back into something that's compliant. That's not what we do here. That's all I will say. And because of that fact, I'll tell you this: remediation, allowing for remediation in general, is an absolute scam. So that's like saying, okay, you can come and have this job. We'll give you this job and we'll pay you. And if you don't show up, and if you do the job wrong, and if you're not actually living up to the amount of money that we're paying you, we're just going to keep warning you about it. And you can just keep trying and trying and trying and trying, and we'll never fire you. It gives that incentive, it gives that employee, that person, no incentive to do the right thing. It gives you no incentive to have good IPM management and all these other little steps in your facility. It gives you no incentive to do that, because hey, I can half-ass it for cheap. I can put cut rate labor in there. They can cut corners, and I can take my moldy bud and remediate it a little bit and put it back out there, and we'll be fine. It's like, of course, they're not going to go to the ends of the earth to be a tier 1 operator when there is no enforcement. There's no real repercussions. And with us, it's like, listen, if we work for 90 days on a crop and we have to destroy that, Dude, a small business? I mean, that's 90 days. That's the next 90 days of not paying bills. That's what that is. These big companies that roll on venture capitalist debt and they grift and wash money from some other God knows what income source. They don't really care about that much. They'll pay the fine. They'll cut the corner. They don't care. So I think that having that even involved in your program at all is ridiculous. I think if more consumers knew what they were actually getting when they put their hard-earned money on the counter at the dispensary, I think they would be fucking pissed. I think they'd be disgusted, and I think they would stop utilizing those outlets. And I think that's what's coming. Everybody's hot to trot to send you cease and desist letters and to say, hey, take that video down. We're going to sue you. I think you won't have any legs to stand on when the consumers wise up and they just stop purchasing from you. We look at all these. We want to boycott ICE, right? So everybody walk out of what you're doing. We want to boycott corporations, so everyone stop purchasing from these places. Well, let's do it. Let's do it then, right? We can do that in our marijuana. We can do that with our weed. We can do that with our cannabis, with our hemp. Just go find a reputable company from your local community that's doing the right thing. God forbid you Google a couple interesting facts about companies or products. I think more people will wise up to that, and then these large operators that do this shady shit will not have legs to stand on for much longer.
That's exactly why I like talking about it, because at the end of the day, it's just like a corner being cut, and like the average consumers don't understand, like what they're getting and stuff. And like, not to say like no one, like what you said, like I'm not super familiar with the remediation process either. Like I've seen it a little bit behind the scenes, like I said, in the Big Za company, heard it from a bunch of other people. But at the end of the day, like I know it's not necessary, and I know that it's just kind of like sleazy. They know that they can use this process, so they don't care about cleaning their product. They don't care about keeping their facilities clean. And I just think if the average consumer like actually understood this, they wouldn't support them. They'd support a craft grower.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we just got to keep talking about it, keep educating people. It's going to take time, but like, that's how education works. It's all about like repeating the same information. We're beating a dead horse, but like it's just how people learn. Next question. We talked about this the other day too, which you gave a really like unique take that I haven't heard. What's your opinion of like cannabis or hemp, whatever, moving to Schedule 3? That's been a hot topic, and just elaborate on that.
I mean, I think that's another one of those distractions that the government likes to throw out and dangle as the shiny object and say, we're doing something when they're really not. And moving something from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is essentially a medical carve-out and a government corporate carve-out, because they're going to, again, we're talking about red tape. They're going to put red tape and licensing fees on that to where only specific chosen winners that can afford it or have the infrastructure can control this substance. And that's why I say like marijuana was never going to be legal. If they wanted marijuana to be legal, they would have descheduled the entire substance. They didn't do that. They rescheduled it, and they basically took it from, okay, the cops can't arrest you for it and put you in prison as if it's crack cocaine, but if you want it, you can buy it from the select few individuals. And then if you don't, we'll arrest you after that. Right? So the Schedule 3 to me, or the rescheduling to Schedule 3 to me, is an absolute scam. Again, it does nothing for hemp. It has no effect on my hemp operation. I've already been off the controlled substances list for quite some time. We just discussed that. So people are shouting and jumping up and down, oh, this is such great progress. I think it's a step back. Because you're taking something that was already illegal and controlled, and they literally say it has, high probability for abuse, no medical benefit, but they're trying to sell you medical marijuana. I don't get that. That's weird. So if it doesn't qualify for that definition, why is it even on the schedule entirely? That's something I think that they should look at. And people that are celebrating this are more of the old guard, exhausted individuals that have gone through all of the scams and bamboozling that a government will do to, hardworking cannabis growers. So I don't fault them, but we kind of have to look at a bigger picture here. You're not, if you haven't already signed a deal with a large corporate cannabis company or a medical marijuana provider, or if you're not, Merck or Johnson and Johnson and Pfizer and all these other companies and big alcohol, you're on the chopping block. Your days are numbered, especially with it being rescheduled. Because again, it's going to become something where you have to go to a doctor, you have to go to these specific retailers, these pharmacies, and it's all going to have some red tape and some high price tags and some control behind it. And I think that it has nothing to do with hemp. In fact, I know it has nothing to do with hemp because hemp was already removed from the Controlled Substances Act, and we are federally legal with federal banking and that sort of thing. So it has nothing to do with hemp. It doesn't affect me whatsoever. I think it's actually discouraging to see it happening to cannabis and marijuana operators and having them actually celebrate it. That's what's the worst to me, because at the end of the day, like, the elites and then the government can do what they're gonna do. We've seen that. Holy shit, they're all pedos, right? They're gonna do what they want to do. But the fact that we can't fight it and put up a big fight, I think is just not true. And if we would look more into hemp that's already descheduled, again, I don't know how many spotlights I got to put on this thing. Everybody's like, we got to get people out of jail. We got to deschedule this. We got to stop putting people in jail for this. And it's like, well, if it just had hemp on the label, nobody would have gone to jail. Like, you realize this is federally legal already right now, today. Like, you can start the business, you can own it, you can have it, you can go buy it at a store, you can put your money in the bank. Like, to me, if you want this whole one plan initiative or this whole, I want cannabis to be legal and have everyone be able to have access to it, it's through the hemp market and through the hemp industry. It's been there. We've been building it for a long time. We really would appreciate people just taking note to that. We're not, here's what's crazy about that too, with the rescheduling is, marijuana and cannabis people, it seems, do so much hard work working against hemp when we're playing chess and you guys are playing checkers. You guys are hopping one square at a time. We got all these different tools in our tool chest so we can move all over the board. So to me, I think that hemp is what everyone's been looking for, and if they would realize it quickly, we would have something that, like I said, is unstoppable. It's too big to fail. It's huge, and the demand is there, and the commerce is there, the infrastructure is there. So I think that's hopefully where we will go when people realize that the rescheduling was just a scam. That, damn, hemp's not even on the schedule. Hemp's not even on in that conversation at all.
Super interesting. Yeah, I've seen a lot of one guy, and I think his name's like Anthony Maniti, wrote, like, he's a dispensary owner in New Jersey, and he's owned a pharmacy for a long time. And he wrote a long article about how it literally makes no sense, the move to Schedule 3, and then also just like the Controlled Substances Act as a whole. But that's kind of a whole other topic. I know you're kind of pressed on time,
Yeah.
but I want to get
Dude,
into
that's
some of these other
I
topics.
actually have an episode about some of that, and I will do more to try to explain, because when I did an episode on it, we did it at kind of a high level. But a lot of this, like, definitions and legal terms, are all connected to a lot of laws, a lot of treaties, a lot of things that even are not just about America. And that's like
Yeah.
something else that people don't, they don't peel back the onion enough. And we have marijuana and cannabis operators that do a hell of a lot of work to undercut hemp and to destroy hemp and to talk bad about hemp on their podcasts and to their platform and their audience, and that all just makes everything so much more difficult. And you're lying, like, you're basically you're basically trashing something that is identical to what you're doing. It's just in a different place at a different time under a different name. And so the more that we would kind of, I think, if people can get off of that high horse and kind of clear the fog from what the government has been fooling you over for quite some time, not only the feds, but your state government has been fooling you for quite some time, I think this whole entire plant will be more accessible, more affordable, and it will kind of take us back to the counterculture and the anti-establishment and the alternative that cannabis was. I don't want your pharmaceuticals. I don't want to, appease people that are in charge and in authority. And I think we can go back to that. And if we do, I think we'll have a lot more success.
For sure. I wanted to move into some of these like consumer facing questions or like
Yeah.
consumer education stuff. Like who are some of the, obviously like we see, the whole culture and community, everyone's like focused on the exotic, like some of the exotic brands growing some, really good product, right? Who are some of like the growers in Texas who are like growing, the best product in your opinion? Go ahead.
Yeah, so a good place to start. We have a page called the Texas Hemp Classic, or the where we basically do flower judging competitions, and that started by a company called Grow House and an individual named Liz. She's done a great job of like really crafting our community of growers and of this connoisseur consumer culture. And so, everybody has their cannabis cup, and Texas kind of needed to do the same. And so we started to do that. And when we did that, we saw people that were legacy growers, black market growers, maybe people on an exodus from California or Colorado, right? And they were coming to Texas to start over for many reasons. And so when they started to see that we had a community of cultivators and a community of connoisseurs, I think more people started to realize they could home grow or closet grow or scale a small facility and a small business out. And then we quickly, I would say over like 3 to 4 years, we turned around and we looked at where we started and where we came to today. And we have some of the most talented, uh, capable growers, breeders, cultivators, whatever you want to call them in Texas. I believe our talent here is stacked to the ceiling. And I say this because I smoke this product and consume this product basically every single day in and day out. As far as some names to drop, I gotta say Geremy Greens. Jeremy Anderson is probably one of the best master growers inside of the state of Texas to this day. This guy started at the hydro store. He started to consult and build hydro tables for some of the black market folks and some of the indoor agriculture folks. And so this guy is just a wealth of knowledge. He can't be beat. He puts out some of the most incredible flower. I have entered his flower in competitions across the United States. We can stand up to the best of them with the facility that we have. So Geremy Greens is definitely one of the brands to check out for premium flower and exotic, that you would call it. Luke from TNT Roots is another big one. He's kind of out in like West Texas, which is kind of like no man's land. So we love him. He's always been committed to fire. He has amazing facility. Way up north, we're really all spread out here. Way up north, we have the Caprock Family Farms in Lubbock, an amazing indoor facility. These are generational farming family folks that have basically their two young sons started to kind of get out of college and wanted to take over the agriculture business, and they realized that corn, cotton, and potatoes aren't really cutting it. We're running out of water, so they started to work on the indoor agriculture area, and hemp was the cash crop there. So they built a state-of-the-art facility. They're currently the largest facility in Texas, up there in Lubbock, and I think they have over 1 million plants in the ground right now, outdoor as well. And then we go all the way down south to the coast, down in Corpus. Corpus Christi is a really nice beach town we have down there in Texas. And we got the Fresh Grown Texas boys down there, also known as Drops of Life, which is where their like medical and CBD stuff comes from. And then they have Fresh Grown, which is kind of the hemp and the recreational type products. They are not only amazing people and amazing growers, but they help us keep this community upheld to a high standard of not only quality product, but quality people and being good human beings in this community. I'll tell you what, people that try to undercut us, talk shit, and that aren't here to lift up everyone else, they definitely get shown the door really fast. So we definitely have a very high standard for not only our cultivators, but our community. If you're here to stay for the long haul, you better play like it. And that means being dialed in your grow, but also being a good ass person and adding value here, because we can take a guy that's not the best grower, that's a really good person, and we can make him a really good grower. But we can't take a terrible grower who's a fucking asshole, and change that. So we want good people, and I think that the list goes on, dude. I have a list of probably 30 growers in my growers group, all across the state, that every single one of them, I would put their name up against any other brand name or any other grower out there. Their quality is bar none. I just can't list all 30 of them off by my memory. But I think one thing that people should know is that Texas has talent and has super high quality product. If you come here on vacation, if you come here for work, if you're coming here to just see the scene and see what Colton's been talking shit about for so long, we have the quality of product to back it up. I can guarantee it. And those are just a few names of brands that you'll see on the shelves that you can check out.
That's dope. I'm excited to look into them after this episode too, because you said some names that I haven't heard of. And all those brands in Texas that you just mentioned, they can ship. You can ship product nationwide, right? That's dope because there's just so many people like still, all over the country that don't have access to like good, clean product. So yeah, I mean
I
that's
try to
a
tell
big
people that all the
plug.
time. Yeah, I try to tell people that, you can go to jeremygreensfarm.com. You can order directly from us. And so if you sign up for what's unique about our program, and I'll talk about Jeremy Green specifically since I'm behind some of it, but what's unique about our program is, I don't know what relationships some people might have out there in the medical or the rec market in these other states, but when you subscribe on Jeremy's website to his emails, you're not just getting emails that are like trying to get you to, buy the next eighth and market you some product in a piece of plastic. What you're getting is actual updates and feedback of what he's doing in the grow. So it can be anything from him just brain dumping what happened today to some photos of the progress to maybe some Meta Ray-Ban AI like clips of what he's doing that day. So you already are immersed in the experience of your product and your medicine that's coming through our facility. And then not to mention, you can order that to your door discreetly anywhere in the United States. So we can get you that product that you need anywhere in the United States. You don't have to go to the dispensary. You don't have to check in with your, ID with a doctor and put your name on a list to get some medical card. Like we make this really easy and federally and state compliant so that people can get access to this product. And it's good quality product. So it might say hemp on it. It might say Texas on it. I would tell everybody, take the leap of faith, spend the $40 or whatever it takes to get that taster out to you, and then you give it a shot. Roll it up, enjoy it, bake with it, do whatever you're going to do with it, but put it to the test and see if it stands next to the quality of product that you're consuming, whether it's from your market or from another operator. But, I think the thing that's really transformed our business is the 50 state legal, nationwide aspect of it. I could see why I definitely feel for some operators and why they're struggling. When you cut off your access to the rest of the world and the rest of a market, it's a big gut punch to your pocketbook for sure. So we like the fact that we have interstate commerce. We can sell online. Shopify supports us very, very heavily. They love us. They love the transactions we do. So we just have a lot of good things moving, in our corner and in our favor in the hemp market. And, you can go on to jeremygreens.com and you can buy any of our latest and greatest strains that we're running right now. Some of them are bred by us. Some of them are pheno hunted by us. Some of them have been in a vault, like kept alive as a mother for 50 years or whatever, So we have a lot of crazy stuff to try. And that's all stuff that's related to Texas. We even have the infamous Texas shoreline. So anyone who's been around Texas or beyond, if you've smoked back in the day, some really just danky, skunky, sour cannabis, that was Texas shoreline. We're bringing that back. We have a federally compliant strain that is the real cut of Texas shoreline. So just a lot of cool stuff coming out of Texas. I think there's a lot of culture that people they tend to overlook it. And those days are over, man. Texas is on the scene.
That's dope, bro. Shout out Jeremy Greens. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And so one question, this is like kind of it's a thing everywhere, but like is the consumers in Texas like heavily focused on THC percentage, or is it are they more like nuanced? They care more about like the full spectrum stuff, kind of like what you said, or what does that look like? Does THC percentage matter to also like further that question and topic?
First of all, THC percentage does not matter in Texas. Most of the time, especially for the last 3 years, you're getting stuff that is last year's harvest. So if you think that what you're getting in your hands is going to match the COA that may or may not even be legitimate, you're wrong. And that's another reason why you should go with a local Texas business, is because we have to have these COAs. We have to test our product in order for it to be legal. We have to submit that to the bank, and the bank does call the lab. And they're like, hey, is this operator the person who submitted this sample and then got this result? THC percentage just doesn't matter in general. I think more people are still stuck on the hybrid sativa indica here. Most people are looking for something that has like those, I would say, like style of effects. Like, oh, I want to be real chill, or I want to be able to focus, or I want to be somewhere in the middle, right? I think those are more of the things that shoppers shop with kind of blindly. THC percentage, I think we are not as prone to that because it's been kind of such a lie, and we already have known that it's been kind of a lie. And also, are you talking about THCA? Are you talking about Delta 9? Are you talking about total? I mean, there's all those nuances. But I'll say this, every single day, people are getting smarter and smarter. With every episode that goes out of Growingtec, Texas Growers Podcast, First Smoke, Dope is Yola, whoever else is putting out content, every single day people get wiser and wiser to what's going on behind the scenes and what the marketing tricks in the industry are. I've had stuff that's tested at 14% THC that made me feel a lot better than the things at 40, so typically people that put high numbers are lying. A lot of those high numbers are impossible. Like, it's impossible for you to have a plant that comes out of the ground to be 40% one chemical compound. The plant's huge, people. Like, you got to really be a little bit quicker and smarter on some of this. So I don't think that Texas really cares about THC percentage. I think Texas cares about the effects. That's where I think people are shopping with the whole sativa indica hybrid vocabulary, is simply because people are looking for the effect, the experience, and a lot of people just do it for the right now. We sell a lot of pre-rolls. We sell a lot of like instantaneous type things. So I don't really think people are that caught up necessarily on the minutia of like the percentages and stuff like that. I think, maybe 10, 15% of people actually check a COA. I don't think that's good. I'm just putting that out there. I think that's even probably being conservative. Most people just buy stuff and consume it right away, right? But I think the people that do are learning, and they're going to be more intentional. And I don't think THC percentage or numbers or any of that is ever going to really affect Texas. I would say it's more of those like vocabulary words, and also hype. If you put Big X the Plug or some Slim Thug or a rapper in your content that says, hey, this is the best pack, you need to get it, that pack is better all of a sudden, right? And so I kind of look for those things to really be the driving force here, honestly, especially in the long term. It's like really going to be more of your connection to the community and the culture rather than just your numbers that could have been edited in Adobe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I talked about it the other day on the podcast with LMC, but in my opinion, it just seems like a psyop created by Big Zaw, because it's
Totally.
like a metric that they can control. All the consumers, are in many other states. You said Texas doesn't, but like, in Illinois, all driven off THC percentage. And in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, it's all just like fugazi. Like, they're working with the testing labs, they're getting the highest percentage with them. And
Yeah.
it's all just a psyop. You know what I mean? Like, it's a perfectly curated, yeah, psyop. Like, there's so many
Well, it's
different
crazy
angles. The
because
bud tenders.
we're
Go ahead.
cultivating plants over and over, right? I mean, we definitely if we could get something that could produce 40%, we're gonna go find it. We're gonna push our yields. We're gonna push our facility to give us that. And that's the thing, is like it's really just not possible. It would be really difficult. And now all of a sudden we have all these strains out of nowhere. I mean, I'm getting cuts from the same genetic breeders and providers that everyone else is, and my stuff is not getting into the high 30s and 40s, right? So I definitely always thought it was a psyop. And I'm not. Everybody thinks they're the best grower. Everybody thinks they did better. Whatever. To me, if you blind tested people, if you put bud in jars and let people pick based off sight, smell, and flavor, you're going to realize that the THC percentage has nothing to do with people's choices and how they rate it. And so even when we do our grow competitions here, like the COA or the test results is not anywhere on the table. It's not at all connected to anything that's an entry. Everything is blind. And plenty of times the thing that is not the most or the highest THC percentage is going to be the winner because it has the best terpene profile or the best effect or the best flavor or the best smokability. So I just think that stuff's all been a psyop. It's all fake. I think those days are numbered. And especially because it's one thing if people had varying THC levels, it's like consistently round after round, you're just adding another 0.2, 0.3% to just keep going up. So eventually weed's going to be 100%. You know what I mean? Like rosin's 86% on average. Like how much more could we possibly need to get, on the flower? So I think those days are numbered, dude. The THC
For sure.
percentage with with that is fake.
I agree. What I know a couple more questions here. What's some advice you could give to, a craft grower building a brand, maybe not just in Texas, but really anywhere?
Don't do what these other idiots are doing. Don't look online and see somebody with a flashy car or a bunch of packs or a big grow and all the technology. Don't take that for being legitimate and for what it's. Just take it for with a grain of salt and do your own thing. When you're creating something that's small batch and craft, it's not supposed to be like everyone else's. And I've only ever found success with holding out and being unique. And like I said, with our email campaigns, we want to show you what's going on. We want to show you, hey, if you're waiting 60 days for the strain to drop, we want to show you exactly what's going on because you're obviously there and you care and you're waiting for this as a connoisseur. And so I think like when you harness what you truly are, which is a small batch craft cultivator, you're crafting a small batch experience for these people. This strain may not be here that long. This may not be in inventory or be a SKU for very long, right? So it's always something that's about the experience and the connection. Don't ever give up on that and don't ever give that away for some get rich quick or some solution or some check that somebody puts in front of you. Because I'll tell you what, people only offer money for things that they could never do themselves and that they think are valuable. And that so people trying to sway you or convince you is the ultimate sign that you're on the right track and people can't keep up and they can't figure it out for themselves. And time again, people have knocked on my door and on my partner's doors and they've offered us these big deals or these pipe dreams and we've said no. And maybe in the immediate, we left some money on the table, but we still got our asses attached to us. We still got our brands, we still got our dignity, and we still have control of doing whatever we want to do. And when you're a small batch operator or you're an operator in general, I think that that's something that you should hold near and dear to you because everybody has a different take. This is a gigantic table for people to sit at. There is a gigantic amount of opportunity here. So your small batch craft growing process might just be the exact thing that someone is looking for, and that's what they want to smoke. And same for me, same for the next guy. And if not everybody wants to smoke the same strains, the same flavor, the same cultivar, the same work from the same person every single experience. I have an appreciation for other brands. I don't just smoke my own stuff out of my own facility. And I think that remains true across the aisle or across the board for consumers is that right there. I think if you're craft and you have something special, double down on what makes you special. Don't double down or venture off into the things that have been done before. I don't have the most state of the art facility. I don't need it. I don't want it. Sometimes more tech, more problems, right? So if it works, don't fix it. Stay craft, stay true to what works. And that will always, always prove right in the end. And if we can get some of these small batch craft growers to band together, look up outside of your grow for a little bit, realize that there are a lot of people against you, but there are just as many people here for you. And if you join up on that side and in that team, I think small batch craft growers, there's nothing stopping us from dominating our local communities.
I think that's great advice. A couple more questions if we can fit it in. So we talked about
Yeah.
this a little bit. What do you think about like all this recent propaganda? So like on X especially, like the New York Times article came out like and this has been happening, this obviously um it got worse in the last like week because of that New York Times article, but really like the last like 6 months to a year, I feel like the propaganda, it just like came in way harder. So like, do you think that someone's behind it? What do you think about all that?
I think there's a few entities behind it. I'll also say this, to hop on this podcast today, did you pay me? Did I pay you?
Nope.
Right. So, and what sucks is that this is our God honest truth from our experience, and nobody paid us to say any talking points or push any narratives, right? But with the mainstream, that's not true. There's paid media, and then there's earned media, and paid media is what you pay for, and earned is what you earn after you pay for it. So you're paid media all the way through. And so I don't always listen to these headlines and these hit pieces, especially from mainstream sources like the New York Times, which we already know is prone to lying or saying whatever they need to say to get you to click on it. The other half of this is, there's people want
I think, to hang on to this reefer madness, and they want consumers to be scared. They want people to believe that these, hemp products are going to hurt you or marijuana is going to hurt you. I think that's coming from old ways of thinking, old guard in government, alcohol industry, industries that are going to be changing and not be able to keep up. But I think the biggest reason why we've seen it come in so fast and hard lately is because even though we're in the day and age of media and messaging, and we have these great platforms, like all these other content creators, you mentioned Luke, like First Smoke, we have all these people putting out content for us, but I still think it's not enough. And I still think that sometimes having just a conversation, you could have the highest level conversation, but if you're smoking a joint, I think people are just less likely to give you the credibility. And that's not the joint's fault. It's not our fault. But I think that's the way the society goes. And so I think it's our fault that we're not controlling the narrative a little bit more. We're not putting more people out there. They don't have to be, monkeys in suits. They can be people from the industry. Like myself, I'm wearing a Canna shirt right now. I'm wearing like a literal grower shirt right now. I came straight out of the grow. But like, I think we can still put some of our better people forward, our better messaging forward. And so for every piece of shit hit piece that comes out from some media that's struggling to make their next dollar, I think folks like us and folks like some of the content creators out there can help serve a better purpose in the messaging department, put a better face on our industry, put a better image behind our industry, not lose our culture. That's not what I'm saying. I don't like the Chads and the tech bros or any of those people that come into our industry and poke us around either. And I'm definitely not one of those. I don't know if you, maybe by the look of me or whatever, you might pass a judgment, but I definitely don't like those guys either. And I think if we all did a better job of just owning this, owning the messaging, owning the actual face of the industry, the PR that we do for the industry, we'll have a better future ahead of us. I think that's the reason why we've seen so much of this. Is just we've let some of this bad narrative get the most views and be the loudest, and we got to stop that. We have to show the better side of this all the time. It's not all about cultivation and tech and who's smoking with who. We need to show farmers. We need to show the impact this is having on people that aren't necessarily stoners, or in our culture. This goes far and far beyond those archetypes of people. And I think that when we do that, we're going to see less of this propaganda, less of these hit pieces, and we'll be in a way better position in the future.
For sure. The stigma is still real, but like it will only, get destroyed through like good representations, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so kind of wrapping this up, I know you got to go here. How can listeners like support craft growers and like fight for hemp in Texas? Like kind of the final question. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we have a bunch of groups out here that are definitely always looking for help with money to support our lobbying efforts and to do fundraising. That's a very important thing. So if you check out the Texas Hemp Business Council, THBC, that's a great organization to support with money and resources. They do a lot for us here on the state level. We also have the Hemp Industry Farmers of America. They're another federal organization that is overarching on all of our states and also helping us fight Congress at a federal level. So I would definitely support some of these groups that are advocates, because without them and without the real fight in the government, there is no industry. There is no real future. It goes all the way back to square one. And so that's definitely what I always say is important for people. If you're looking at not just giving money to politics, the best thing to do is to buy from a local Texas company, a small business. And you can do that by finding them in a local retailer, Googling, where to find certain products, certain brands, reaching out to them on social media, and diving into the local operators that are creating products in your actual community that are going to be fresh, that are going to be natural. And the money that you spend, on a $40 brownie with me, that $40 makes us jump for joy in our office every single time that order comes through. Versus with a large corporation, they wouldn't drop $40 they wouldn't pick up $40 if they dropped it on the ground. So I would also remind everyone that the biggest way to support is to like, share, and spend money with small local businesses. And that's definitely the number one thing that I like to tell people is just remember, when you go to buy your next smoke, your next edible, your next product, just remember, like, look for a small local Texas business to try out first, because it goes a lot further with that small business than it does these big corporate weed companies or these big corporations that are hemp companies. And also just be careful, who you believe, who you trust, where you shop. Be skeptical, be vigilant, use Google. We all have an iPhone, right? I have my iPhone right here. I can look up reviews, I can look up facts and information on the web, on the internet, and there should always be information out there for consumers to make the right decisions if you so choose. So that's my biggest thing. Support local, support Texas, and give Texas a try. If you're not from here, we'll definitely surprise you. Follow and subscribe to the Texas Growers Podcast, and everything that we do on social media. We literally keep up with the forefront of Texas cannabis, from culture to cultivation to the industry, you name it.
Totally agree, bro. Yeah, shout out to Jeremy Green's Texakana, Texas Growers Podcast. Colton Luther, thank you for coming on the podcast, bro. Thank you for your time and like all the wisdom. I think it was a really good episode, and I hope everyone learned something about Texas, and beyond from it.
For sure, dude. Thank you, and thank you to Growingtec, and don't stop. Once you start this, I know I'm the second episode, but don't stop, bro. We need more people. We need more noise, more of our narrative out there, and obviously you got a really good insight on what this industry can be and where it's coming from. So just keep pushing, bro. And anything that we can do out here in Texas to support you and vice versa, let's get on it. And don't hesitate to reach out, and let's do another episode soon when there's more updates, because I plan on keeping this winning streak alive. So
Appreciate you, bro. Yeah, you can come on the pod anytime, bro. Yeah, we'll have to run it back here in a couple months, like after we learn what happens with the what is it, the Department of State Health Services?
Department of State Health Services, and the rulemaking for hemp and everything. It's going to be look out for something in March on that, and I'm sure I'll make a lot of noise on any other updates on my page until then. So.
Oh yeah, we'll have to run it back then. So appreciate you, Colton. Anything else you want to leave the viewers with?
Nah, that's it, man. That's it. Stay smoking, and don't believe everything you see. Stay vigilant out there.
Appreciate you, bro.